Welcome to another episode of the Community Broadband Bits podcast. I'm Christopher Mitchell at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. Got to think of a new name for the new combined show, and I'm going to have to come up with a new entrance, I guess, because, we'll see what happens. Definitely kudos to the old Leroy Jenkins video clip. If you're not familiar with it, for the cadence on that, it's a great memory. It's more than 20 years old now. Hard to believe.
We're getting old.
It might be around 20 years. I get to know it's probably about 19, 20 years old. All right. Rye, welcome to the show. We're talking about what we expect to happen today. We're going to make some predictions, but really we'll be chatting a bit about what's coming in the coming year. We got 4 of us here, predictions from another 1 or 2, and we're going to make it work. Rye Marcatilio, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chris. Good to be here with you all.
And then we got Sean Gonsalves. How you doing?
I'm here. I'm holding. I'm ready to predict, I guess.
Yes. You're feeling you got your soothsaying hair on? Your soothsaying hair?
Yeah, soothsaying. Oh, I thought you said sue something. Okay. Yeah. Soothsaying.
You know, the S's aren't great for me. I didn't figure that out until they told my son he has a lisp, and I was like, what are you talking about? And we got Christine, the mapping maven and data witch. Welcome.
Thank you, Chris. Good to be here.
So, Sean, I think you wanted to start off with the local. I think in terms of not necessarily the local to our knowledge, like the very focused knowledge that we do. We're going to start narrowly in our field of study with community broadband and then widen it out to larger tech and perhaps trust issues. When I say 2026, what do you think about, Sean?
Well, I think about what a fool's errand it is to try to do predictions, but it's fun. It's fun.
Right. I can't predict what's going to happen today, right? We're literally recording this Tuesday morning. I think Jordan will probably work his butt off to get it off this afternoon. And by then, we might be at war with Europe.
Exactly. So it's like doing these things are fun, and it's a good exercise in remembering unpredictability and uncertainty is especially right now, is central to life in general. So having said that,
you're going to bring some humility, but now you're going to jump into saying what the future is.
Having said that, I'm going to still step into the arena, and I think I want to start with our particular wheelhouse. I mean, we're in we have a lot of fingers in different pots, but when it comes to municipal broadband, I feel like that's one of our lanes. And so I felt like we should go there first. So,
yes, we are less ignorant about municipal broadband than other things.
Exactly. So this week, Rye published a story. It was a centerpiece about the new municipal networks that came online this year. There were 7 total, which keeps this trend that we've seen, really this explosion since the pandemic in municipal broadband. So looking at 2026, I'm going to predict there were 7 new networks last year. I'm going to predict that there will be less than 7 in 2026, maybe 3 or 4 that come online in this year. And looking further out, it feels like municipal broadband could be at a bit of a crossroads in the sense that I don't think a lot of municipal broadband networks or municipal broadband plans are going to be getting federal funds outside of, the existing municipal programs in, say, the state of New York or California. So I'm going to go ahead and say maybe 3 or 4 new networks in 2026.
Okay. I'm going to say I think there's going to be more, technically, because I think we're going to see some of these California ones start up, but that could also be 2027. We'll see. It depends on whether they start off very small or they wait till they hit more of a critical mass and they take longer to get going. I do think we're in a lull, and I think that's natural. But I also think, in 2010, when there was a big pushback against Obama, what happened was people voted for more conservative people all across the ballot, right? And so city councils, school boards, all kinds of things, we saw a wave. And I think the people that are going to be getting elected in the wave that we're seeing right now in local, they're going to be more interested in municipal networks. So I don't think this is like a permanent decline. I feel like we're going to see more interest, not necessarily in a Chattanooga, right? We're not going to necessarily see a city of 500,000 building out suddenly to everyone, but I think we're going to see more targeted municipal investments in the future. So I do think we're going to have a lull. I would say probably less than 10. So I guess I'm in that 7 to 10 range is what I'm thinking. Rye, what are you thinking?
Well, are we talking retail networks or do iNets cup too?
I'm thinking networks that we add that are offering some service to the public. So that could be open access, it could be retail, but business. It will be, we're not talking about a service to the municipal facilities.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Then I'll revise downward a little bit. I'll say, I think you guys are both a little bit low too still. I might say 12 to 15.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, we're certainly in a lull, but the last 2 years have been, particularly slow years. We got to enjoy a few ARPA funded years, the couple years before that. And so I think we're, back on the rise.
Christine.
Be the dead weight and say 2.
All right.
There you go.
The thing that I think appreciate also is just that like most of the municipal networks were not built with federal dollars. And so it certainly helped and made it easier for some communities.
Well, I mean, that's a good thing to point out, because I don't want to create the impression, nor should we. And actually, one of the things we should probably be doing throughout the year is reminding people that you don't necessarily need federal funds or BEAD dollars to build a municipal network. I do think that sort of, I've come across it a little bit in like talking to different communities who kind of feel like their only shot is to get some kind of like federal funding.
Yep. All right. Who wants to step into the void? Are we going to let Sean do another one, or are we going to throw out a different topic?
That kind of was a good segue for my only kind of vague prediction in that, like in terms of continued infrastructure development, I think we're going to see it most happening in states that have plans and funding in place that are independent from federal funding. So like Maine, I think Vermont, and I don't know about the rest of the states, but that's kind of my like, we're going to see really strong pushes with the like more localized sources of funding.
Yeah, I like that prediction.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be the case. I think we're going to see that in a lot of areas, actually. I mean, I think some of the things we'll talk about regarding the AI and things like that, I think we're continuing to see this distrust of centralized power that is frankly built into Americans properly. And, I feel like if we have immigrants that come here, they quickly learn that they should distrust centralized power. It's like one of the things that we do well. So
yeah, and it's a good one. I mean, one state, I think it'll be interesting to kind of follow Vermont. Because I don't know how well they're going to make out with BEAD, even though they're like perfect for BEAD because it's such a rural state. But also, we've got a story posted this morning about, how do you pronounce? Is it Lamoille CUD just finished their network. I feel like there's a couple of CUDs that have finished or are close to being finished, and so. I mean, there's a lot more work that still is left to be done in Vermont, but it'll be interesting, especially because that's a state that pretty much has centered a community broadband approach in their state plan.
My understanding is that they're taking some grief. NTIA is trying to figure out how to hamstring them in Washington. Let's talk about BEAD a little bit and our senses around that, because BEAD just, once again, NTIA has broken with both tradition and law in changing the rules of the program to require that states suspend certain laws that may touch on certain areas, such as net neutrality and a variety of other things. We haven't done deep reporting on this because my city's under occupation, so I'm a little distracted. But we are it looks to me like it is a significant overreach, and I'll be curious to see how states are reacting. I don't know that there is a legal mechanism for the state broadband officer to become the dictator of the state and say, "Hey, we've just decided these laws don't apply anymore." Legislatures, may have to act, and some states don't even have legislatures that meet this year. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this. But I think my prediction would be that we will get through this calendar year and more than 5 states will have no BEAD dollars yet.
Interesting.
I wasn't sure if I was saying that, if that was aggressive or not, but I think...
I'll take it one more. This is more of a hopeful prediction than anything. It's that one state will refuse BEAD funding on these grounds, that they are not just going to give a handout to the Amazon Leos and the Starlinks of the world. One state will refuse BEAD funding.
All right, Christine, BEAD?
What was yours, Chris?
Mine was at least 5 states will not have received any BEAD funding by the end of the year.
I feel like it's going to be more than that, I would say.
I think it might be, yeah. I'm cautious, I got to say. I'm going
to say more than 10.
Yeah, I think it's going to be like 20, and we're going to be like, poof. Sean, what are you going to say? Jordan's coming in at 48. I'm just going to put Jordan down for 48 again. We're going to make this a tradition.
I was trying to quickly count how many quote unquote blue states there are, because I was going to guess around that number. So,
what are you saying that Minnesota, which by the way has an estimated 130,000 immigrants here without papers, compared to other states that have more than 1 million, that blue states are somehow being targeted in ways that other states aren't?
Man, targeted. I mean, it's our bullseyes, seriously right now. So I'm going to put it around the states that don't get their BEAD for a variety of reasons at around 15. And some are going to just flat out say, like Rye suggested, that we don't even want it or whatever. And I'm going to say that California is going to be that state.
Yeah. All right. So you got 15 and California is one of them.
Mm-hmm. Who says?
We talked about this a little bit internally, and I would say that would be a slam dunk if not for the budget deficit. Like California has such a financial hole. I'm curious to see how that changes. Plus, we got Newsom wants to be governor, so whatever's going to be good for. Sorry, he is governor.
President.
He wants to be governor, and he has further ambitions beyond that to be president. Yes, thank you, Ryan. All right. Anything else on BEAD?
Well, I'll just say one last thing is that when it comes to BEAD, and the reason why BEAD predictions in particular are so difficult, but this is and why predictions right now are so difficult is because in order to even really try to predict, you kind of have to assume rules and laws and policies are going to be followed. And in this day and age, it's like rules, laws, what are those? So, it just makes it almost impossible to be right about any of these things because,
Yeah. No, my dad, he, back before poker was cool and on TV, he was in the Navy, and I learned a lot about playing poker. It was an important part of serving in the Navy, my understanding. And he told me a million times as I was growing up, you can't play strategy with a fool. And yeah, it's a very related sentiment to what you're saying. It's hard to predict when, I don't know, when we're about to go to war over Greenland. Just what timeline is this? BEAD, Rye, anything else?
Nope, I used my BEAD one up.
All right. So I have one for Leo. Christine, you mentioned Leo, and or no, was it? No, Rye did. Rye mentioned Amazon and Kuiper and stuff like that, I think.
Yeah.
All right. Am I just not even paying attention to this show?
You did.
So I made a prediction. I made this prediction in December, and I was so excited to share it. And then SpaceX decided to do something that makes it far less likely to happen, which is good for humanity, good for science, good for all of us, but bad for my prediction, which is that I predicted that there would be a low Earth orbit collision in 2026. But then they decided to move 5,000 or roughly half of their satellites down below, I believe it's 500 kilometers, and in order to try to deal with this. In fact, this is a good time to talk about it because there was a major event on the sun yesterday, I believe, a magnetic pulse, or I don't know how the physics of it really work, but like a solar storm. And in the event of an excessively large one, not just like one that's large for 20 years, but one that is large for 200 or 500 years, we would lose contact with satellites for a long period of time, like hours to days. And in that time, we would not be able to do course corrections. I think rational minds are prevailing in trying to minimize the danger because these collisions would be bad. It would not be as bad as if it was in higher orbit, but it would certainly be bad. And I think there's that. There's also the possibility of a intentional collision from Russia or China or something as these different countries try to throw their weight around up above us. So I'm predicting, I'm saying it with lower confidence than I did before and a bit of dread, but that there will be a collision in space and low Earth orbit satellites.
I think this is a good one. There's a paper that just came out last week from led by Princeton University professor called An Orbital House of Cards, Frequent Mega Constellation, Close Conjunctions. And, so I'm going to read this quote from one of the more recent Starlink annual reports. It says, quote, Starlink satellites made 144,404 collision avoidance maneuvers in the period from December 1st, 2024 to May 31st, 2025.
6 months.
Averaging 41 maneuvers per satellite per year and one collision avoidance maneuver every 1.8 minutes across the mega constellations. So this paper from these folks introduced this idea of the crash clock. They say in 2018, that crash clock, what happens if we lose complete communication? There's 180 days until some unplanned collision between satellites. That was in 2018. They put the crash clock in January 2026 at 5.5 days. So I think we will not see a collision in 2026. I think we may see one in 2027, but I was going to say we'll see a bunch of unplanned avoidance maneuvers, close calls that'll make the news in 2026. Remember, it's expensive for them to move the satellites down, right, in the constellation. It's not a free thing to do. It lowers the lifespan of those satellites, which inevitably raises costs. And at a time when Starlink is burning through money trying to get as many satellites up in the sky as possible, it's not something they're just going to do for free.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of other Musk stuff, so let me plan that I'll probably throw in something negative about him. So in the meantime, I'll say SpaceX, I think can afford to do that. It is going to cost them, but their service is working out well, right? I mean, it's really picking up in terms of the number of subscribers. It is a good service. I don't think they're going to be having, as much success with the V3 satellites and getting them up because of Starship. I think Starship is going to continue to have setbacks, but I think it may be able to launch some of the V3 larger satellites for SpaceX. So we'll see what happens there. But I think it's really great that they are taking this hit to lower the chances of collision. I mean, I think they're self-interested, but it's also in the interest of humanity. given that practically no one is actually in charge for them to be doing that, they're going to lose their satellites more rapidly because they will be getting more orbital drag from the atmosphere being a little closer to the planet. So it's certainly something that I'm glad they're doing. Sean, I'm
gonna go with Ryby. Well, actually, I appreciate this one. I wasn't planning on making a prediction in this area, but it gives me the one opportunity to say one optimistic prediction for 2026, which is to agree with Rye that there will not be one. And it's mostly just because I don't want there to be one, and not because I love Starlink. It's because it is tied to my biggest fear, which is in that movie Gravity, when the satellite thing breaks up and it messes them up, and Sandra Bullock is flipping into outer space like by herself. Like, that is horrifying to me. That's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen in my life. And so I
also love Sandra Bullock. I was horrified at the idea of losing her. Am I misunderstanding your point? I'm just kidding.
I love Sandra Bullock too, though, a lot.
I don't know why we don't just the federal government should be paying her and what's his name? The guy from The Proposal, who I love, Ryan, I can't remember his name.
Reynolds.
Free guy, Ryan Reynolds. The two of them should just make movies. Like, they should release 3 movies a year. I would watch them all. Christine, anything else on SpaceX?
I guess when you said, I think Rye said something about seeing this in the news, I challenge that. I don't think we will. I feel like that's just not a topic that's going to be hot.
Yeah, I should have said not the mainstream news, but the
trade publications.
Yeah,
Ars Technica,
the techie.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you all think about the importance of internet access in this year? I mean, last year, I talked about how I do feel like it was very clear that this has fallen off the radar. Many people who have portfolios of responsibility don't even think about this as an issue. It's not a priority. From what Christine was just saying about making the joke about whether or not the satellite stuff will be up there. Are we going to see a continued? Are we going to see it stay same? We're going to see it drop off in priority, or are we going to see it increase in priority?
Well, I have a prediction there. This is going to surprise you, maybe, which is that I think we've seen the drop off, and I wouldn't be surprised if it continues to sort of be like, there's so many problems in the world, that's the least of our worries, kind of a thing. We got bigger fish to fry, but I'm going to say that we're going to see an uptick because of the pandemic that is now ravaging the country, which is influenza, and people are afraid to go outside. They seriously are afraid to go places. And so, like the pandemic, I think people will be spending a lot more time at home, and internet access is going to be super important for folks. So,
I do see a lot more face coverings up here.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
yeah. Okay. So you think it's going to go up? I think it's going to be about the same. I don't know how we're going to measure this. This is going to be pure sentimental analysis at the end of the year. But
is this like interest in development, like infrastructure development?
It could be. I think it's just more of a sense of the zeitgeist.
Right.
So impossible to measure.
Yes.
So say whatever you want, Christine.
My favorite kind of prediction.
You can make it right next year.
I guess my thinking was more towards the digital skills, digital equity side of things, and how that's going to just continue to skyrocket in importance. The ability of people to get those things, I don't know. I think there are groups out there that are really continuing to try and work on that, but there's groups here in Maine. But I think, especially in the age of AI and understanding what people are seeing and if it's real and not, and just how to navigate these digital systems, and like Sean said, people are not wanting to leave their homes, are going to rely on having to order grocery services or do other things to just continue living. And so I think that side of things is going to continue to really increase in importance. I
think it's going to increase in importance, but I don't know if we're going to see the federal, state, or even most local governments increasing their investments into this space. I feel like it's like that silent thing. I mean, it's like if you don't know much about healthcare, right? And you're concerned about the rising cost of healthcare, and then you dig into it and you start to learn about it, and you're like, oh wow, most of these costs are driven by dementia related illnesses and disease, as well as diabetes. And you can start to get a sense of we could really make a big dent by focusing on these things. Or if you go out even further to the seven different chronic conditions. We talked about that in the report that you wrote, Rye, with the Southern Rural Black Women's Initiative on, what would move the needle in terms of healthcare impacts on people. And not to lose the thread, which I'm in danger of doing right now, but the thing is that if you don't pay attention to underlying things, you don't get a sense of why costs are going up, right? Why is it going to be more costly to administer health and human services in the future? Well, because we don't have people that have digital skills that are taking those services, right? Because they have to go somewhere to be in a physical office. They have to wait in line for a person that is going to be using their time inefficiently to serve people face to face, when a asymmetric online technology could help in many cases. Not all cases. We can't get rid of everything. Like, similarly, our healthcare costs are going to rise because veterans have less access to telemedicine, right? Like, we're going to see those costs increase. And I don't think people are going to, in 2026, I don't think we're going to see policymakers making that connection yet. I feel like as much as we try to get them to understand that they need to invest in this, we need to have a Digital Equity Act to support the more efficient federal services where the costs really are. I think people don't get it, and I'm afraid they still won't by the end of this year, although we'll be working at it. We'll be trying to be creative about it.
That's a good point. And I have a prediction sort of related to that, I think. So we can get to that if we want to, but
Well, I want to see what Jordan, but I think we still had Rye left on the old prediction, which was, I'm forgetting
internet.
now.
Whether or not.
Yeah. Is it going to be important?
Yeah. I think I'm about the same. I don't really see. Right. Yeah.
Okay. Let's go to Sean then.
So because of what you just said, not because of what you just said, but related to what you just said, so I've already predicted that I think interest in internet access will increase a bit. But I do agree with you that we won't see the kind of, investments and attention to this from federal and state and even local officials to some degree. So that's why I'm going to make a prediction about fixed wireless, which I feel like, especially in urban areas, it can be a really good solution. It's quicker and cheaper to deploy than fiber. So I think that this growth that we've seen with FWA, I think I saw something about 14 million subscribers at the end of 2025 in that neck of the woods. So I'm going to say, using that as kind of a baseline, I'm going to say that number will grow, but not by much. In 2026, I think the growth in FWA will taper off and will be only about 1.5 to 2 million new subscribers. And I can tell you why, but I'll just leave it at that prediction right there.
I'm with you on that. I want to say that if I was making a prop bet in the parlance of our time now, where our economy is entirely based on betting and crypto and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If we do in fact see, like, there's a scenario in which in 2 weeks we have a significant economic spiral because of the European Union and Greenland and stuff like that. And like, I do think if the economy tanks, FWA takes off. And I think we have more than 20 million subscribers by the end of the year, just because people are like really concerned. They're cutting their budget. They're taking a slower service and they're just going to deal with it, less reliability, but they need to save that like $40 or $50 a month they're going to save by going to it.
So are you predicting that will happen, predicated on?
Well, that's the thing about that. A prop bet is like a bet that like is not just like a single thing, right? It's like there's a different word for it, maybe. I don't know.
That's what I mean. Are you really predicting that?
Yes, I do think that is going to happen. I will make that prediction, and I sure hope that I'm wrong. This is one of those things where, like, hey, if I'm right, like I'm a genius, and if I'm wrong, well, then I'm economically secure. So, like, win-win,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll see more FWA gains in the next year. I don't think we come close to 8 million more, but I think there's plenty of space for them to continue to take market share. I think they are continuing to be aggressive about it. So yeah, we'll see a bunch more FWA. But I'll point out, John, you said quicker and cheaper than fiber. And the keystone of that is the second half of that sentence, which is in the short term.
In the short term. Yes, I should have said that. Exactly. Yep. And I should have said to deploy.
So one of the people who lives in a smaller community and has more familiarity, at least, with some of these options.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I know in Maine, they're evaluating like cell service availability across the state to improve that, because there are, I can walk down the road and lose service, and it's very unreliable and spotty throughout the state. It's pretty consistent in that way. So I think, especially in more rural places, we're going to see an increase. And this is actually something Ryan and I have talked about a little bit lately, but I think we're going to see cooperatives continue to expand their use of that tool as a way to expand their footprint and just have another offering for their customers.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, particularly the co-ops that have been at it longer, right? Because like if you're 5 years into a build, you're still struggling and not sleeping at night. Whereas if you're 10 years into a build, you might be pulling in, net income that then you can put into another business in order to improve the lives of your member owners. So, I could certainly see some of the earlier co-ops having more freedom to do that sort of a thing. Okay, I want to do Jordan's. Jordan says something, we've talked about this before, but there is a movement against AI. It ranges from people who are really concerned about computers for all kinds of reasons, from detailed, well thought out economic analyses to having watched the Terminator series of movies. There's a variety of reasons for why people are concerned about this. But there is an anti-AI movement. There's a lot of anti-data centers. There's concerns about data centers for a variety of reasons. But there is undoubtedly a growing movement of concern about that. Jordan says that those folks will continue to grow, and we will see this movement going more anti-tech, and that will be forcing more of a move by the time of the election for, I think, both posturing and legislation to rein in some of the power of the big tech companies.
Solid prediction.
Yeah, I mean, I like the main thrust there. I think we had our chance to rein in the power of Google and Meta recently, and decided mostly to let that just fizzle out and do the bare minimum.
Did we decide that right? Because my recollection is that there was different concerns, right? I mean, this is one of those things, right? When someone's asked, is a president on the right track or wrong track? There's inevitably some number of people who are like, it's on the wrong track because he's killing the country. And on the other side, there's people who are like, he's on the wrong track because he's not doing it fast enough, And so there's this question of where were we with the tech companies a year ago? I feel like a year ago, the Republicans thought the tech companies were terrible and were killing this nation because they were allowing, woke snowflakes to control everything. On January 20th, all the tech giants sat behind President Trump. A lot of them have funneled money to him personally and then publicly as well. And the tech companies seem like they're on the side of the right now. And so now more people on the left are opposed to them, in part just because of that appearance, I think. So there's a little bit of real honest analysis on both sides as to frustrations, but there's also some just of the musical chairs of well, this guy is with other people I don't like, so now I don't like them. So anyway, I just want to complicate that a little bit, because I feel like it's worth remembering how messy these things really are in terms of lots of people can hate Apple, Google, Microsoft, Netflix, Amazon for different reasons. And to fix the problem for some of them makes it worse for other ones, which is interesting.
Yeah.
True. I was more talking about the Facebook Meta monopoly trial has been going on for years and years and years, right? So, and the Google Chrome divestment trials was also going on for more than a year, right? So that side of things is more what I was talking about. We had our chance to implement structural solutions, and instead we decided not to.
Do you think that's in the past? You know a lot about tech history. Do you feel like that's an opening salvo, or a missed opportunity that we will rue?
A missed opportunity that we will rue. They were big.
Okay.
I don't see another handful of trials of that size and scope in the next couple of years, certainly.
I'm going to agree with Jordan generally, but I've got a AI related prediction, which is that it's actually, I'm going to agree with one of my favorite writers and thinkers, you know him well, Chris, Cory Doctorow, who wrote a great piece in The Guardian last week about this AI bubble. And he said AI is a bubble and it will burst. So I'm going to say that and I'm going to agree with him, and I'm going to say that in 2026, it will be the year where there will be a significant correction or deflation of the AI bubble, where we'll see the shift from the over-the-top investment hype that we're seeing now to a show me the money phase. And so I think there's going to be a reckoning there. Right now, I looked up, there's 576 operating data centers, hyperscalers, I would think, in the United States. There's 658 planned projects. I think that number of planned projects will go down because we're going to be entering a show me the money phase. And just this morning, I heard a little snippet from, who's the woman who was one of the founders of Signal, the app? Can't think of her name, but she said that, Meredith? I mean, obviously it's too late now, but so much of AI is like a whole marketing thing, marketing scheme. And she even said that even the term artificial intelligence is marketing. It should be called machine learning, but I mean, it's kind of too late for that now. But anyway, I thought that was kind of an interesting observation. But I'm going to say this 2026 will be a year of reckoning. The AI bubble will deflate some, and we're going to enter into the show me the money phase.
So I want to say that as we get better at what we do, we're going to have a point at which when Sean says, show me the money, we actually insert the clip from Jerry Maguire, and we actually make this a little more fun. That's our future. I hope
so too.
For us internally. Christine, what do you think about AI?
I guess I was going to ask Sean, how do you how do we tell that it's deflating? Like what measures are you looking for?
So that's a good question. That's why I was trying to go by, that's why I looked up like how many planned data center projects there were. And so if that number goes down, I think that will be one indication that.
I think it's going to be cut in half or more so. I mean, what did you find, Sean? I'm thinking the number of planned data centers. It's in that's hard to say because there's so many different ones. Sorry, go ahead.
658 planned projects.
Okay. Yeah, I would say fewer than 200 of them are have broken ground and are moving forward. After the bubble burst, and maybe even fewer than that.
So
and I should say, though, that some of those planned projects, of course, they're planned to say start construction, but not finish until whatever, 2029, 2031
right.
and stuff like that.
Yeah, we'll be talking about starts. Go ahead, Christine.
I guess I'm just thinking AI has been woven into every aspect of our lives at this point. And so do we see it actually starting to be removed from things in that form of a decline? Because it's existing off of our current infrastructure already without having more projects built. So do we see those projects not get built and then things scale back? Or
so
that'd be nice.
Step back for a second. That's a really good question, Christine. I had not thought about that, but it really goes right into a direction that I wanted to go as well, which is if you go back to the internet boom, there was people who said the internet is going to have a big bust, right? There was an overinvestment, there's exuberance, there's too much money chasing too few good projects, and this is going to fall. Other people said there's an internet bust that's coming, the bubble's going to burst, and then we won't use it anymore. This whole thing is wasted, right? Mm-hmm. I feel like we are going to see an AI bubble burst, but it is just going to be it's going to be a decline, and then we're going to see it ramp back up again. I think we're absolutely going to keep having more of these tools. But let me ask you, because I think everyone should answer this. If you had to pay for every AI usage over the next month, rather than just being able to do it for free, would you use it at all? Less so, or the same amount?
Wow, that's a good question.
Because I would use it much less if I had to pay even $5 a week. I would use it much less if I had to pay $5 a week. So let's put it there, $5 a week. What's it worth to you, Christine? How often do you use it? You probably use it the most out of all of us.
You tell me time is money, so I say I would pay for it.
That's such a good answer. Oh my God. I just feel so good right now.
I'm right.
It helps with my job. So
yes. If it saves you time, I want to pay for you. Yeah. I want to pay for your scarce time, Christine. Exactly. You're right.
I don't have a coding coworker, so
you're using it for productive things, whereas I'm more trying to figure out a correlation between corner kicks and something else in soccer or something, because I had a stupid thought. Right?
I mean, at home I'm asking for meal plan ideas, right. So I would probably not do that.
Yeah, I'm not paying to use it. I would use it way less. Yeah.
I'm with Christine. I would pay the $5 a week.
Yeah. So I was listening to a show, and it was funny because I've heard other people do variations of that question over the past few months, and usually people are like, "Nah, I don't really it's all right and it's nice," but I was one of the big tech, there's a big technology podcast that I think is pretty good, but I think it may have been the New York Times one. What's it called? Whatever their tech show is, I can't remember now. But they were I couldn't live without it. I would pay any amount of money basically, and I was like, "Are you serious?"
Yeah, that's
real?
crazy. Well, I should say that when I say that I pay $5 a week, you're also talking to a person that has a gym membership. Guess how many times I've been to the gym in the past year?
I would say it would be contingent on it continuing to work well, because I think something that the tech people are realizing, there is so much AI produced generated stuff that's on the internet, and those things, as that continues to get fed into the AI, into the models, it's not going to improve it anymore. It's going to stop learning at some point unless it ingests more human information. So ultimately it's dependent on us.
Yes, absolutely. This is where it's interesting living through this cycle. If you read about what happened for the hundreds of years after books were introduced, or after the magazines and newspapers were introduced in pamphlets and stuff like that, in terms of how we had people started believing crazy things, and and certainly you see panics like the Salem witch trials. It's not fully technology based, but you just have these manias, and then people get used to this sort of thing. So anyway, I feel like we're in this cycle right now that's it's hard to get a sense of that, but there's a lot of people who believe crazy things, right? I mean, who would have thought that in 2026, when we have hot air balloons as well as other things, people are still arguing about whether or not the Earth is a giant sphere or not.
Or if we've ever been to the moon, actually. But I want to ask Christine about your prediction or your observation about AI being dependent on us. Are you predicting that we're going to be in the Matrix soon, and they're going to start plugging us into.
I think it's long disproven that the human body is a terrible power generation machine.
Yeah, but not for energy, for information.
I mean, they already are. There are so many apps now, and I think this is going to be a big policy issue moving forward, that you have to opt out of your data and usage in an app being used to feed their AI tools. So, and I know in Illinois, like Facebook had lost a lawsuit when they had facial recognition as an opt-out instead of having to opt in. So I think we're going to see policy implications from that and having to change that around, because it is wild how many of these things now just automatically feed your data, your information, your usage into those programs.
Well, when these companies have such like an interest in like getting that for, to feed their AI growth dreams and everything, does anybody feel confident that when you opt out, you're really opting out?
Right. I mean, these are people that wantonly violated all kinds of copyright laws. After fining Jamie Thomas, single mother in Duluth, like millions upon millions of dollars because her child used the song without authorization, downloading it off the internet. Like copyright was so important, we had to bankrupt single mothers for the rest of their lives, send them into bankruptcy because we had to like respect those laws. And then Facebook comes along and they're like, oh, every book that's ever been written? Yes, thank you. I'm just going to put those into my model, right? Like this is how the law works, unfortunately, it feels like.
Yeah.
I don't know, Ryan, am I overstating that? I feel like you're just sort of like, Chris is just off. Like,
you're not that wrong, right? Like if I were to have to choose an entity that could go up against the copyright lobby and win, it would be, Google, Facebook.
Right, but not because we think Google's view of copyright should work, but because we need a good balance, and it was out of balance before anyway.
Well, also because they're way, way bigger.
Yeah,
and they already stole it. I mean, what do you know? Copyright.
Right. No. So I mean, to Sean's point, like at this point, I mean, we've certainly seen suggestions that like you delete your account on Facebook and they're like, okay, it's deleted, and similarly, like people who have never had an account with Meta's created a massive profile on them based on their travels across the internet, based on a variety of identifying characteristics of the platforms that they're using and things like that.
Right.
So
what do they say? Anything that you put on the internet is there forever, except that thing that you wrote a few years ago that you now really need to find, it's not there anymore.
It's so true. I'm like convinced that I just misremember having written things because I can't find any evidence of it. Any last predictions? All right. Well, I have one, which is more of an observation, which is that like the government's going to be a heck of a lot less trusted, particularly the federal government. I mean, sitting here, I'll just talk a little bit more about Minnesota. I've thrown it in a couple of times, but like, it's a major part of our lives up here. Seeing Chong Li Tao taken out of his house, an 80-year-old man with health issues, in a pair of Crocs and underwear, with a little towel draped over him for something he didn't even do. Right? This is incompetence and malevolence at a scale that we've not seen before, not in this age in this country. Right? I mean, 100 years ago, we saw similar things. Right? We saw people that were organizing for labor were lit on fire or abandoned in their underwear along train tracks in the winter. Right. I mean, like the federal government did horrible things to labor agitators, as they were called back in those days. There wasn't television. There was newspaper accounts of them and things like that. We're in a time in which we can see a lot of this. And the federal government comes up and tells us that like, oh, well, we captured this person because he had committed these acts of barbarism against children. And of course, it was a lie. Right. I mean, we have video evidence of Rachel Good. And it's a horrible situation that happened very quickly. And some people, are very focused on whether the officer, the ICE officer, Jonathan, was in fear of his life or not. But the thing is that she was definitely not a hostage who was intentionally trying to hit someone, right? And that's what the federal government told us over and over again, right?
Exactly.
I mean, like there's some things that like we can disagree with their interpretation, but like there is no world in which that woman was a sleeper cell agent for anything. So I just feel like the level of like lying is just off the charts. And we saw this with like, remember the hurricane in Alabama and like drawing the extra circle with the Sharpie, like just like the lying. And I guess I'm frustrated that there's still some number of people that believe this, but we should take heart in the fact that most people don't, right? I mean, like I look back at the civil rights era and like the things that they went through, which are far worse than what I'm encountering up here. But like most people then were split on like whether Martin Luther King was a terrible person or a bad person, right? They were arguing that like that he was a bad person. Muhammad Ali was a terrible person who should get what's coming to him, right? That's what the public thought. And right now we're in a time when like the vast majority, like 70% of people don't believe this stuff, right? Some of the people that support what Donald Trump is doing and his administration do believe it. But most of them recognize that it's bad and they still want him in power, but they want him to be more restrained. And so like, there's times when I feel really like hopeless, but there's other times where I'm looking around and I'm like, people know that they're lying. Right. And the question is sort of like, what do we do about that? And so like, you know, I don't know, like there's people out there, like I think of it as like the people who will watch Star Wars and be like, yeah, like I love Luke. I'm so glad that the rebels won and this and that. And in their real life, if they were in that, they would be watching the Imperial News Network and they would be like, Alderaan had it coming. And maybe those Jedi kids weren't even really in the temple, right? Like they would just be like, oh, that didn't really happen. You know, they'd be coming up with all these. We don't need to convince those people. Right. There's always going to be some number of people who are going to be arguing about how the earth is flat. Right. Our job is to ignore them and focus on like how we can build a better world. And so we are going to see less trust in government. I think one of the things that means for us is that we have to build more trust. We have to do our jobs with integrity. We have to make sure that we are accurate in our claims and not just like try to run with something faster because it's convenient. Right. We need to make sure we see the progress that's happening. One of the things that I took part in last week was I helped protect, you know, middle-aged school students who marched to the Capitol from a mile away. And it was like 15-degree weather, but a vicious wind out of the north that made it feel like it was 0 degrees. And a lot of freaking Minnesotans, man, you know, like, God bless them. Half of these kids have coats, but they didn't wear them because they had a hoodie, right? Like, that's a Minnesotan for you. One kid had shorts, one kid had short sleeves, right? These are kids that are like 12, 13, 14 years old. But the thing that you got to look at in something like that is the fact that those kids look around and they see that they've got Hmong kids, they've got Black kids, they've got some kids from Eastern Africa, Somalia, Ethiopia. They're all marching together, right? A lot of white kids of Irish backgrounds. St. Paul's a very Catholic city. And like they've got each other's backs and they know what kind of world they want to live in. And that's where I feel like we're going to come out with less trust for government, but like we're seeing good things happen and people are recognizing this. So like good seeds are being planted. And I feel like that's the thing that's trying to keep my spirits up in these hard times. You know, it's just like, I think at the end of this year, I think we're going to be on the upsurge. Like I got to think that we're going to be, you know, saying, wow, that was hard and it was really shitty, but we're through the hardest part. We've got a lot of work to do. And, you know, that's laid out. We don't really know how we're going to do it. We don't know how we're going to fund it. We don't know what sacrifices we're going to have to make. But I think we're nearing the bottom.
Well, God bless you for your optimism. God bless you for your engagement. And I do agree with you about that whole trust piece and how vital that is for a community. And just to bring it sort of full circle in a sense, is that I think, though, that lack of trust in government is going to fuel a lot of the anti-tech backlash that we talked about earlier. I mean, especially when you're seeing like how technology is being used for how ICE is using different technologies and some of these big, you know, AI platforms and whatnot. All of that feeds into it.
Yep. Yeah. And that's the thing. People are right to be distrustful. But like, you know, we need imbalance, right? This is what I feel like my whole life is like, I'm like, we need these things in balance.
Yeah. And it's a good reminder to cities that they can't be passive agents in this whole thing. They need to be actively trying to build bridges and look for ways to improve the lives of the people living in their towns. That might be a municipal network. That might be, you know, a range of other things. But we trust our local governments more when we have more touch points with them and when we can see them trying to do things. They don't always have to succeed, but when we see them trying to do things to make our lives collectively.
Any last words, Christine? All right. Well, sure hope that we're all still around and Greenland is still green, although it's really actually covered in ice. Iceland is much more green than Greenland, I think, is my understanding of things. I don't know. Not been to either one yet. We'll see what happens at the end of the year. I'll tell you this. There's going to be a bunch of stuff we didn't predict.
Yes, there will.
Probably by the end of the week, let alone the end of the year. So I want to thank everyone who's tuning in. I want to thank you. If you're listening to this show, it's because you're trying to build a better world. And we appreciate that and appreciate your work. You know, there's so many good video games out there. It is very easy to just focus on that and not try to make your neighborhood better. But we need these things in balance, right? You got to have video game night and you got to have improve your neighborhood night. So I hope you're out there doing that. And thank you all. Let's hope that this year is way better than we're expecting right now.
Amen.
We have transcripts for this and other podcasts available at communitynetworks.org/broadbandbits. Email us at podcast@communitynetworks.org with your ideas for the show. Follow Chris on Blue Sky. His handle's @SportsShotChris. Follow Community Network's stories on Blue Sky. The handle's @CommunityNets. Subscribe to this and other podcasts from Island Star, including Building Local Power, Local Energy Rules, and the Composting for Community podcast. You can access them anywhere you get your podcasts. Catch the latest important research from all of our initiatives if you subscribe to our monthly newsletter at ilsr.org. While you're there, please take a moment to donate. Your support in any amount keeps us going. Thank you to Artie Huseby for the song Warm Duck Shuffle, licensed through Creative Commons.